Q&A at the end. But I think without further ado, we'll get started. So it is my pleasure to introduce Nardine Oakes to all of you. If you don't know Nardine, she is the strong rider. She's been a performance coach, athletic physical performance coach for a couple of decades now. And
So old.
not at all, not at all. Coaching amateurs, Olympians, professional teams. And I've been working with Nardine for the last year and a half or so. And just personally, I can say that Nardine is a very compassionate, clear, supportive coach who gets what you want to accomplish and will help you achieve those goals in a very supportive and collaborative way. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Nardine. The invitation had a bit more information about her bona fides, but I think you can read that for yourself. So over to you, Nardine, and welcome to the OEA Winter Webinar.
Thank you. Thank you, Steph, for that introduction. And thank you, everyone, for coming and the OEA for inviting me to speak this evening. It's obviously a topic that I am quite passionate about. And so we're going to cover, I've got sort of 5 topics, which I'm going to speak briefly about each one of them. And they're all sort of topics, again, that I think are super important to our sport. And, you know, as Steph said, I've worked as a strength and conditioning coach for the last 24 years. Working with a variety of sports, and I've ridden horses my whole life. And it wasn't actually until I moved to Canada, if you can't tell from my accent, I am from New Zealand, that I actually started competing in eventing. So while I've ridden my whole life, the eventing bug actually got me in Canada. And I'm very grateful to be a passionate eventer. I wouldn't do anything else. And so a number of years ago, I think my anniversary is actually tomorrow for the Strong Rider, I decided to combine my 2 loves of sport and exercise and working out with horse riding, because I found that every time I was going to the barn, friends and fellow riders were asking me for help. And though several of them were like, you should really do this properly, instead of just always helping out everybody at the barn. So that's what I did. So, I mean, the first one that I just had was like, I wanted to talk about the general benefits. I mean, I think we're one of the most unique sports out there, because we compete with an animal, and there really is no other sport that deals with a live animal, and everything that we know that goes into horses and their personalities, and just their sheer size alone. So obviously, you know, being strong and having good strength, to me, decreases your risk in the saddle. But it also makes you a more effective rider, because it helps increase your aids, your efficiency in the saddle. And it also makes their jobs easier. And so my motto for the strong rider is be a better teammate. And that's because I truly believe we owe it to our horses to make their jobs as easy as they can be. And that's by being a capable rider, who's sitting up there, and we stay balanced, and we help them out versus them always helping us out. Obviously, from working out, the increase in balance and proprioception, your ability to react. So, you know, when I think about a horse spooking or stopping, you know, when you work out, you learn to react and move and get back in the tack, versus perhaps just falling off. Okay, we're obviously, always trying to decrease the amount of time that we're hitting the sand and the dirt and the grass versus our time in the saddle. So when you do work out, the number one feedback that I do get from a lot of my riders is the increase in their balance and in their body awareness. And where that becomes super important is in our lessons. And so I have a lot of coaches who send me riders or their students because their ability to improve in their lessons hits a wall. And that a lot of the time is around strength, lack of fitness, and their ability to adjust. And so as an amateur myself who takes lessons regularly, none of us show up to a lesson not wanting to do what our coach asks us to do. But sometimes some riders don't have the actual physical capacity to make those adjustments that the coach is asking them to do. And so when you start to work out and you start to train regularly, that body awareness translates amazingly into the saddle, so that when your coach asks you to move a right shoulder or adjust your left hip, there is a capacity there now to actually make that adjustment. So that's a huge benefit, is just the increase in capacity and performance in your lessons. And then you're getting more out of it. You're able to progress more in your lessons because you have the physical capacity to do that. And there's nothing more frustrating than not progressing in the saddle and not feeling like your lessons are getting any further. But there is, good news. You can work out and you can, make those changes. And they're pretty simple. The other one is, again, fitness. As eventers, like the first thing to go when you're not fit is up here, and you do not want to be out on cross country and out of breath and not being able to make quick reactions and quick decisions, because it's just not safe. And I don't say that lightly or to scare anyone, but that is the reality of our sport. It is a dangerous sport. And regardless of whether you are a beginner, novice, or a 3-star eventer, we still need to be able to make decisions with our brain, and a lack of fitness will impact that. So when you're fit, you're able to breathe, and when you're out on course, you're able to react, because we go out in all weather. Sometimes it's sunshine, sometimes it's rain, definitely hopefully no snow, but we need that fitness to also keep us safe and make good decisions. So the benefits really, to me, are pretty blindly obvious, of how it can impact us as riders and to keep us safe in the saddle, but also to progress. So that was like the first one, was just like the general benefits, is all of what I just sort of went through. The second thing I had on my list, and again, please put in the chat if I'm talking too fast. I am a fast talker, and I get excited when I talk about something that I love. So just let me know if I need to slow down. But the second one was, the topic that I wanted to talk about was long-term athlete development. And so I am talking about under 18s, so youth. In the last couple of weeks, actually, I've had a number of show barns reach out to me around getting a regular session in place for their show teams. And that's really encouraging for me to see that barns are recognizing the need for their youth to get active and to work out. If you look at other sports, they do so much dry land training. If you think about hockey, the Canadian sport, like you have got kids under 18 who are going to the gym, who are working out to get better on the ice. And there's a little bit of that mindset as equestrians that just riding is enough. And it just isn't, not anymore. And it used to be. And if you're even if you're a happy hacker, I still, regardless of the type or the level of riding that you do, it's all relative. We all should be doing it. But again, going back to the youth, I do what's called a rider audit assessment. So I go and I assess the rider, I watch them ride, and often the adults are like, "Oh, I'm sure we're like terrible," but honestly, it's the youth that are like wet noodles. They are loosey goosey. They don't have good balance. They don't have good strength. And so that lack of capacity in their body is going to catch them up as they go up the levels. So the more that you can start a youth out and learn how to squat properly, we're not talking about lifting heavy weights or anything like that, but know how to squat properly, know how to lunge, know how to do a hinge, know how to use their core. All of that will build their capacity. And so that as they move through the levels, there won't be that catch out moment. They'll know how to move their bodies because, I read a research article not that long ago, and it talked about the fact that the youth of today just aren't meeting the daily requirements of physical activity because technology has impacted that, right? And so we get to do this amazing sport, but there is often a bit of a catch-up game being played. And so I just highly encourage anyone who's watching who is a parent and does have children, or if you're a coach on here and you are coaching young children, to really encourage that the importance of them working out. They won't be young forever. We all get older. And I think there's that naivety where we're young. Why do we need to work out? But again, I challenge us as equestrians to look at other sports and see soccer, like I said, soccer, hockey, field hockey, all of those sports are doing things out of their sport to get better in their sport. And we really should be no different. And again, I say this, we're a unique sport that we have an animal that is a super powerful thing, and we want to be able to control that horse safely, and again, a strong body and a fit body will do that. And so then we don't have to use our hands. We can use our seat and our body to work with our horse. So again, youth development, really, really important. And like I said, it's been super encouraging the last few weeks to have a number of barns reach out to me and inquire and want to get their youth working out. And so that gives me a lot of hope that we're starting to see that there is that importance for our youth in sport, and also for the longevity of eventing, right? We want these kids to stay in our sport and to continue, riding through all the way and staying in the sport for a long, long time. And the more that we look after them as youth, then, to me, I see that, helping our sport in the long run as well. Okay, that was number 2. Number 3 on my list was about busy adult amateurs and professionals. I did a post just recently. I juggle 3 different jobs. I work at a university, I run the Strong Rider, and I work with a professional lacrosse team. And so I know I feel like I definitely know the definition of busy. And so, what I train my clients is something is always better than nothing. And they know that rule is something that I enforce all the time. And I don't say enforce, it's probably not the right word, but I remind them on a regular basis, because often as equestrians, we're perfectionists. We want to do things right and fully. But sometimes life is just lifing. And so the best thing that you can do is be okay with doing part of your workout. So whenever my riders are having hectic weeks or perhaps traveling for work and they're going to be in hotels, then we look at, does your hotel have a gym? If it doesn't, then, we can do body weight stuff in the hotel room. We can do core mobility. We can do 5-10 minute little bite-sized workouts. And that's going to keep things ticking over. And so when you work out regularly, you're allowed those grace periods. And by grace periods, it's just being realistic of what your week looks like. And so that's something that I live by all the time, is the something is better than nothing. And so for my professionals who are working full time in horses, same thing, like having things that they can do at the barn in between lessons, in between horses, how to look after themselves before going to a show. Their schedules are just as hectic, and that's the same conversations that I have with them. And so we call them, our snack size workouts, and that's how I support my busy professionals, is by creating mini workouts effectively. And so they can be 5 minutes, they can be 10 minutes, and on a good day, 20 minutes. And so I think there's this misconception out there that a workout has to be an hour or an hour and a half in order for you to get results. But it doesn't need to be. Most of my workouts that my clients do are between 20 and 45 minutes max. There's probably one or two that love an hour workout, and that's their personal preference. But realistically, the clients I work with are busy individuals. And so we're trying to be super efficient with the time that they have. And so it's just about smart programming. And like I said, being efficient, and knowing where your gaps are. And that's something I do as a coach, is help my riders figure out where the gaps are that they can fit something in. Looking at their week ahead, when are they showing, when are they traveling for work, all of those sorts of things, so that we can navigate it. So I just encourage you, if you are a busy adult amateur like myself, or a professional, to maybe take a wider lens of what a workout looks like, and that if you do little snack size workouts throughout your week, it all adds up, and it can add up to a 3 1-hour workouts if you do bite size. So say you do 3 10-minute workouts in one day, like that's still 30 minutes that you've moved your body and you've done something for yourself. So I'm a big, like I said, big advocate for, if you can get a 45-minute workout in, amazing. But like, there's other ways as well to get your movement into your day if, your schedule is a little bit hectic. And so, so it's just, like I said, thinking a little bit smarter around that, and just knowing that, traditional workouts of an hour or an hour and a half, like that isn't the way that you have to work out anymore. So that's a big thing. And again, people can ask questions. They're welcome to send me messages anytime for advice around how to fit a workout based on their specific schedule. Then I'm always happy to give that advice and to check in with people. So just something to think about, because I know a lot of people are surprised sometimes when they join my program, that workouts aren't an hour or an hour and a half, and you're exhausted, because ultimately we still want enough energy to ride our horses, because that's the whole reason we're doing this, right? Is to ride our ponies and to have fun with them. And so we have to find that balance in and around our busy schedules. Okay, so that was topic number 3. 4 is injury prevention and injuries. So something I feel like every time I talk to a new client, it's always like, okay, injuries, tell me what you have. And often I have to add, tell me the ones that are undiagnosed, because we're not really that good at going to the doctors and getting things checked. And so you will be surprised how much a broken toe can actually have a massive impact on how you move just in day-to-day life, but also in the saddle. And so obviously at the start, I talked about the general benefits of working out, and one of those is injury prevention. And, falls happen. It's part of our sport, but we can, the healthier you are in and the stronger you are in, the better your rehab is going to be, and also your recovery. And I always sort of love talking about a rider that I worked with. She was 72. She is 72. And, she had a big accident, which we never love to happen. But her daughter actually emailed me and said, I just wanted you to know that the doctor said if she hadn't have been working out regularly, it would have been so much worse. And that was such a lovely email to receive, because it was still it was a bad accident. It was a punctured lung. It was a doozy. She really did a number, but thinking of how much worse it could have been, that was nice, that her working out in some small way helped with her recovery, but also then her rehab, because she obviously had a significant rehab too, after that fall. So, again, because she was already in such good shape, it meant that rehab went so much better. And so, working out, we know that accidents happen, we know injuries happen, but just like horses, the stronger your horses, then, the better their recovery can be from an injury, right? So just being mindful of the preventative effect of horse riding and working out is really key. And then I touched on it sort of at the start just then, is when we do get hurt, we do actually need to find out what's going on. We can avoid things, and we do, and we can take Advil till there's no Advil left in the bottle, but ultimately that's not going to fix anything, and it's just going to cause issues down the line. And the impact on your horse, if I've talked to many body workers who have confirmed this, and when a person has come back from an injury, they see the impact in the horse, because whether you think it or not, you will be compensating in some way with your body if you haven't done the right rehab. And then your horse is impacted. And so I think we just think that they can take whatever they can, and they're super resilient. And don't get me wrong, horses are super, super resilient. But it does have an impact. And I remember this was a couple of years ago, but having a rider tell me they had broken their ankle, and they were just doing bareback riding, and their body worker came, worked on their horse, and said, what have you been doing? And they just were like, I genuinely didn't think it would impact my horse that much, but it did. And so I know we don't like to miss out on riding and stuff, but all I'm saying is, I highly encourage getting a diagnosis, going to your doctor, going to a physio, seeing an athletic therapist, and working on it in conjunction, with a strength coach like myself, so that you can work on making sure it's not going to continue to impede you in the saddle, but also long term in life, right? Again, I want to be like my 72-year-old client, riding still at 72. And, one of those ways is by looking after your body now, and making sure that, when you are older, that the injuries that you ignored don't come around to bite you effectively. So, I like to say, I've just turned 44, and I'm pretty lucky, touch wood. I haven't had a broken bone. I've had certainly little things throughout, but because I don't ignore the things when they pop up in my body, I go and seek treatment when my body needs it. I really have been very lucky. So again, I just it goes back to our horses. We get body work for them. I know the old saying, we get body work for them, chiro for them. They get their teeth done, they get their nails done effectively, and so we're the last on the list. And so just thinking again, taking that step back, having that bigger picture to be like, what is you not looking after your body? How much impact is that actually having on your horse? And I think we again, there's a little bit of naivety of thinking that it doesn't impact them as much as it actually does. So hopefully that's maybe thought about something. And again, we know that injuries are part of the sport, and I'm certainly certainly aware of that, but I've also seen what happens when we try to ignore them, and then how that can then cause multiple of issues in other parts of your body as well. So so the moral of the story is don't ignore it. Just you can work within an injury, but the more that you know what's actually going on, the better you can get back in the saddle and also be just safe and good for your horse. So that's my little speech, I guess, on looking after injuries. And then the last on my topics that I wanted to talk about was for my mums. So I have been very privileged to support a number of riders through their pregnancy and then post-pregnancy. And so, I just really wanted to acknowledge that group because they are pretty amazing what they do and what they have to navigate and challenge. And so, again, there is great research around, looking after yourself during pregnancy, continuing to work out, but also, as I've reminded all my riders, every pregnancy is different and unique to you and what you feel comfortable doing. And, my job as a coach is to create a program that they feel comfortable doing and safe. But there again is really, really solid research around that in terms of it being good for your body during pregnancy. But then obviously post baby, we're always keen to get back in the saddle. And so again, working with someone to help navigate that transition back into the saddle, because we know that the demands of labor are pretty significant. And again, depending on the type of birth that you had, what that recovery looks like. And again, I've been very lucky and privileged to help a lot of mums with that. And again, everyone is unique in terms of their return back into the saddle. But, again, I think it's really important that, there is support in place and that you are seeking guidance on how to get your body back and strong and your core and your balance. Because obviously that's a huge part of it. And then, I'm lucky I've got Sarah on here as well, one of my mums. And so the biggest thing that I wrote down on my notes beside me was, don't be hard on yourselves. Be kind to yourself. I mean, I say that to all my riders, be kind to yourself. But being okay that a workout might not look like how it used to look, and that sometimes your workout might get broken up into different pieces, and that's okay. Sometimes it gets interrupted by a baby, and that's okay. If you didn't get to finish it, but you started it, you're still winning. And so I think it's just I guess I'm just here to remind you that it is okay, that workouts can look really different when you've got a newborn or multiple children at home to juggle. And just that, again, you can get creative. That's kind of where, when I talked about earlier, the snack size workouts become really key with my mums, so that they're able to do little short bursts of movement in between, whatever they might be navigating at the time. And then also, obviously, a huge thing is often sleep or lack of it. And so, again, like listening to your body, and what capacity you have in that moment and in that day. And so, sometimes the best thing for you is to get some sleep, to have a meal, to have a shower. And if you get some mobility in there, amazing. That's something low impact, doesn't take a lot of time. Or a little core workout that's 5 minutes. So again, it can look different. And as I touched on earlier, workouts don't have to be these big 1 hour things. You can do them at home. If you love going to the gym, that's amazing. You can do that. But again, there's a lot that can be done with not a lot of equipment in your house. And so it's just a matter of being a little creative. And that's where I come in, is to be creative with what those workouts look like, so that we can still, recover and get back in the saddle safely as a mum, but also just be realistic about what you're navigating and stuff. And so I have been on many a call with some of my mums where it's been a 3-minute call, because that's all they've had time for, is 3 minutes in between whatever might be happening or in the background. So that's all part of it, kind of thing, is supporting mums through that. So I hope that if there is any mums watching, whether you're currently pregnant, or having you've just had a baby, or you've got young children and you're like still wondering how to navigate it, you can again send me any questions. Those like snack bite workouts, like I said, will be your best friend. And on the days where it's a little bit hectic and you don't have a lot of time. So yeah. I've been whizzing through everything, Steph. They were kind of like my big 5 topics, but I feel like that kind of leaves more time for people to either ask about certain topics, or if there's like a topic that I haven't talked about and you want me to talk about. But they were my 5 big points. But I kind of was like, I don't want to miss out on anything.
Well, yeah, you covered a lot.
Okay.
So I hope we have questions. Just as people are thinking about it, I was taking a few notes, so just a bit of reflection. The term working out can be pretty intimidating in itself. I think that it was one of the reasons I was, I wanted to reach out and then didn't, and then wanted to and did, because like what kind of commitment? So I think that you've done a really good job this evening, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more about just breaking it down. That working out is really about movement, and it's about that. It's the something is better than nothing. And just I know from our work together, working on strength, working on core, doing the mobility stuff, and stretching, and the importance of stretching, and my new best friend, the foam roller. So
We
just
love
wondering
a foam roller.
do a bit more breaking down of the components of a workout, and how you envision it, and how we can be a better teammate with our partners.
Yeah, and I think like I said, I think there is a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of social media. And I think traditionally people think that workouts have to leave you in pain. And, honestly, some of my riders have had those types of trainers where they've barely been able to move, haven't been able to ride. So, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry if that was your experience with working out. there's a difference between, working your muscles and feeling those muscles versus like, you can't sit on the toilet, you can't brush your hair. Like, we don't want those kind of like muscle soreness. But again, I think there it used to be the traditional going to the gym, hour and a half, 2 hour workouts, body parts. And so the reality is none of my clients have time for that. Like they just don't, whether it's my super busy adult amateurs or my professional riders, they are busy. And so, that is where I look at bang for buck types of exercises. So things like squats and deadlifts, where multiple muscles are being used. So that I can be really efficient with time. And so the other thing that I use in my programs is a playlist program. And so what it is that, depending on the year, often it's used in the summer, is that I'll load, say, sort of 4 to 5 different workouts for my clients, and they can choose the workout based on the time. So if they've only got 5 minutes, they'll choose the 5 minute core or the 5 minute mobility. If they've got 20 minutes, they'll do the 20 minute mini strength. And, if they've got 45, they'll do a full body workout. And so again, it's just being smart with your schedule, and efficient. So does your barn have a viewing room somewhere that if you're already commuting, which I have a lot of riders who commute to their barns, can you, if you're already going to be at the barn, can you, before you hop on, take 10 minutes, hop in the viewing room and go through a little bit? It's going to help with your ride regardless, because you're going to be nice and warm. So, can you save time in other areas? Are you, if you're sitting watching a Netflix show, can you be walking on a treadmill while you watch that show? Could you be foam rolling while you're watching that show? Could you be stretching while you watch that show? So, like, again, I'm a big fan of if there's a will, there's a way. And so, it's if you want to, you'll find a way. and you just have to know. And sometimes it's just people don't know how to fit it in, right? And how that can look in a really busy day. And so then the option is it feels overwhelming. And I totally get that it can just feel so overwhelming that it's like where could I possibly do this? And so I guess as well, I didn't really talk on it, but, for me, working out is such a stress relief. It's what I do for my mental health. I do it because I love working out and I know the benefits, but if I'm having a tough day, then exercise will always make me feel good. And whether that is 5 minutes of foam rolling or stretching, movement is medicine always. And so, again, I haven't talked too much about that tonight, but the mental benefits of working out, and also, I know there's a number of women, but the research around the benefits for females is pretty strong and pretty convincing that even if you weren't an equestrian, you should be working out. So I won't get into too much of the science around that, but that the research is very significant around the benefits of for us. So, again, a workout can be a warm up, some strength, some core, and then a cool down. That's how a traditional workout looks like. And mine looks like that pretty much. It doesn't need to be fancy. You just need to know how to do the simple stuff well. And I know there's some crazy things on social media, and again, I've seen them. And I'm all for having a little bit of fun. You got to have a bit of fun. But just like riding, like your horse needs the foundations, it needs the fundamentals. all of my riders need to know how to squat properly, how to do a proper hinge, a lunge, a push movement, a pull movement, how to engage all of their core, and that there's different parts, and the core isn't just abs. We all want abs, but the core is so much more than a six pack. And so yeah, so I hope that kind of answered that question, Steph.
Definitely. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to just start talking, raise your hand, put something in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on a sec. I'm trying to show my face when I ask a question. I had one.
Hi, Doug.
Hello. So does time of day matter for workouts? I know that, like, I prefer to do my workouts first thing in the morning. So get up, go check on the horses, go to the gym, come home, and then clean up, start my day. But sometimes it doesn't work, especially when I go to the office, right? And then when I go to the office, sometimes I can run out at lunch and do whatever I can do because there's a gym there too. But
Yeah.
how does that time of day when you do your workout affect the effectiveness, and what do you suggest is the best, or is it person specific?
Honestly, whenever you can get it done is the winner, right? Because it takes, like, everyone's motivation and energy levels will be dependent on what they're doing during the day. And your motivation for the evening, like, I will never work out in the evening, Doug. I don't. Once I'm home and my butt hits that couch, the thought of getting off it and then having to go work out, that's not for me. But I also know plenty of people who are not morning people, and I'm a morning person. I can get up at 4:30 and be like, let's rock and roll. But I know a lot of people who are like, absolutely not. And so they do their workouts in the evening. And so, it really is more around, where do you think you can fit it in? Where do you feel like you've had the most recovery? That comes into play a bit more. Like, what have you done the day before? And if you're planning to work out first thing in the morning, like, have you had sufficient recovery to do that workout? That becomes more important, is the recovery aspect and what you've done throughout your day or the day before. But otherwise, it's wherever you can fit it in that you're going to do it, and where you feel like you're going to have the least amount of barriers to getting that workout done. Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Of course, Doug. Yes.
So do you think it's better to do a longer workout sessions less frequently, or shorter workout sessions like every day?
So again, that's more like, say I've got a rider who, based on their schedule, they can't do the longer ones. They just, like, their schedule doesn't fit that. Then I do want it to add up to the equivalent of, say, 3 longer ones. So if that means that they do more but shorter, then that's totally fine, because I'm still trying to get like the equivalent of 3 45-minute workouts throughout that week. So yeah, so if you can get 3 45-minute workouts in during your week, amazing. But if someone's like, that's just not realistic for my schedule, then I will break that down smaller and we'll do more throughout the week to get it. But it also is a little dependent on the time of year, right? So there are times, like, if you've done the work, Doug, and you've built a really good foundation, then when you get to, say, the summer and it's silly season and stuff, then you can drop that down to twice a week and just go into what's called a maintenance phase, where you're just keeping the body moving. And so that's the beauty. And as I talked about earlier, there are weeks where I only get one workout in, and I give myself that grace because I have the foundation to pick back up the following week. It's when you don't have the foundation and you start skipping workouts left, right, and center, that's when you're going to get into issues, right? But if you have worked out consistently and you've built that nice foundation, it's like giving your horse a week off, right? They don't lose everything in a week because you gave them a week off. You pick back up, they might be a little fresh, but they haven't lost all of their training from a week off. And it's the same with our bodies, right? If we are consistent with our workouts, if we build a really good foundation, then when life is lifing and we only can get one workout in or two, then the wheels don't fall off, right? We can pick back up the week after and stuff. So yeah, does that answer you? So ideally I'm looking at like 3 times 45 minutes kind of is like the ideal, I would say.
Okay, you make me feel better.
That's my sole job, Doug. I know you work out. You do good.
Although I thought I drop down to 3 every once in a while because of the time, right?
Yeah.
But if you say 3 is good, then I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah. No, three's great. Three's realistic. Like, yes, I have people who do more, but that is the rarity, not the norm. And I think like anything above 3 is a bonus to me. 3's my ideal. 2, I'm like, we can suffice through like 2, but again, depending on where they are in their learning, right? And so again, the 2 days a week is a bit more for either a beginner who's just getting into something, and I want them it to be an enjoyable experience and to get used to it, or the opposite end, and it's someone who's been working out a lot, and they're just in a bit more of a maintenance phase. So it kind of depends on the individual, but we're looking for 3 in terms of like seeing results. Yeah.
And this winter, snow shoveling counted.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes, yeah.
I still want added to the app as an activity.
Yes. Yeah. Because we've talked about that. Yeah. Of the workouts. I had a client who was like was cooking dinner, and she texted me and said, she was like, just so you know, I'm squatting in between cooking dinner. And I was like, amazing. Like, and I think that's the cool part of, like, for me, like that makes me feel good as a coach, is when my riders start adding it into, their day. And one of my professionals, I spoke to her on Monday, and she had missed her workout. She had a full day of lessons at the barn, but she was like, but I lunged and up and down the aisle on my way to each horse. And so she was like, and I lunged here, and while they were tacking up, I was squatting. And so she knew she couldn't get her full workout in, but she knows that because I've taught her something is better than nothing. She was doing walking lunges in the aisle and squats at the mounting block in between those lessons, because that's what she had the capacity to do, right? And I know she'll get a workout in the next day, and that's okay. So again, I think we're so hard on ourselves. If we can't do it, our instinct is just to do absolutely nothing instead. We're like, oh, it's a write-off, might as well do nothing, instead of being like, or I could do 5 minutes, and that's okay. That's enough. Like, the world will be okay if I just do 5 minutes, because that's what's happened with my day, right? And so I see that a lot as people just go into my day's screwed. I might as well just do nothing. Yeah.
I'll just do a little shout out, Nardine, for anybody who's intimidated by 3 workouts. I worked with Nardine for like 6 months last year, I guess, when I was fairly freshly postpartum. And we were in our initial chat, we were talking about like, where do we start? And I was like, I think I can probably do 3. And you're like, let's start with 2. And we actually never increased. I only ever did 2. Like, there were many weeks I just did 1. But it was the first time I'd ever been that consistent with any sort of strength training. And it was literally just 1 to 2 times a week for 30 minutes, never longer. And like, the difference was significant. Even I was like so disappointed, like for the entire 6 months that I was only doing it twice a week. But
we worked on being kind to yourself, didn't we, Sarah?
We worked on that a lot.
We did a lot of
but yeah, so it doesn't have to be like, and that was always a barrier for me too, was like, oh my gosh, I should be doing this for longer, for at least 3 times a week. And especially if, you know, whatever your situation is. And like for me, strength training has never been something I've enjoyed, even though I know how incredibly valuable it is. But I agree with Stephanie, like all of a sudden I love foam rolling.
I know, you know, but it's the mindset. It's like, oh, foam rolling, that's gonna like hurt us and stuff. And I also like, again, that's kind of why I said, Doug, it like depends on like the situation. Like in Sarah's case, she had a newborn and a toddler to juggle, right? And so, you know, that is my job also, to be like, you know, I literally onboarded a new client today and they were like, yeah, I think 4. And I was like, let's start with 3 and make sure we can definitely do 3. And if after 2 weeks you're like, I can definitely do 4, let's add the 4th in. But I want us to start like on that good note. And then, you know, if you prove me wrong, I'm happy to be proven wrong, and we can add the 4th. But like, let's start with 3 and really make sure we can get the 3 consistently, then being disappointed when we don't get the 4 and stuff. And so again, you know, Sarah was juggling 2 little ones. So for her, 2 was perfect. 2 was absolutely enough.
Hey, Sarah, did you ever use kids as weights?
Yes.
I did use kids as weights. Yeah, actually, it's
sure
perfect.
Did.
They keep growing.
I know, she'd message me and be like, well, she's now weighing this amount, so I've increased my weights to 8 pounds.
Nice.
So yes, I'm all for that. Like, kids are great weight accessories for sure. But Sarah can also attest that sometimes your 30-minute workout sometimes took an hour, and that was also okay. Like, you know, and as we joked about earlier, there was a lot of pep talks and reminders that was like okay, right? And that it took a bit, because again, like I said, most riders, we are perfectionists and we like to do things well. And we are notoriously hard on ourselves, and myself included, you know, and so it's just, you know, I'm there to advocate for you and to, again, just remind you to be kind to yourself and whatever you're navigating. And again, like I said, the something is better than nothing. It's something that I'm very, very passionate about, because I know how much my clients are juggling, and how most equestrians are super, super busy. And we work really hard so we can do the thing that we love. And so, you know, it's working out isn't supposed to be a burden. It's supposed to be something you look forward to, something you enjoy, something that you are like, damn it, how can I get that into my day? I don't want to miss that, you know, like that's the dream for me, is that everyone that I help people learn to love working out, who have perhaps either had negative experiences or have just been too intimidated to start, that it can be fun, it can be positive, it can be enjoyable. And it's so cool when you see the difference in this adult. Like, it's just the best feeling getting a text saying that, you know, their riding's improved, the feedback from their coaches and stuff. So yeah, that's why I do what I do, because I love it.
Does anyone else have any questions for Nardine? Okay, so
you can put them in the chat if you want.
Sure. So if anyone wants to again formulate anything, I remember years ago when I started really riding in my 40s, and And like yeah, I carried a little bit of extra weight and still do, but at the time and thinking, yeah, like I'm gonna get fit. I'm gonna ride horses and I'm gonna get fit because I love it. It's exercise I don't hate. That's the old me. But one of the things that my coach said to me at the time was that, you need to be fit to ride, but you can't ride to get fit. And I think that's a bit of a theme of what you've been talking about tonight. So if maybe you just expand on that a little more, because it might be a little demoralizing to think that the riding itself doesn't get you to where you need to be, but maybe understanding more like the mechanics and the physically why that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and again, I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, is that it is the old school mindset is that riding is enough. And it's been so great to see so many professional riders come out and talk about what they're doing on podcasts. And they're phenomenal riders. They're riders we dream that we are going to be like. But they're having to do the work. They know that talent alone isn't going to make them the best rider that they can be. And so, there was that mindset that we could ride and ride and ride. But, riding one horse a day is a little different to perhaps riding, 12 horses a day, like some professionals do. And so, it just comes back to how much you can do in your ride as well. And so, as I mentioned, a large majority of my clients have been referred to me by coaches because they're not able to progress, or their riding is not able to keep up with the talent of their horse. And that can be pretty humbling as well, is when you've got this incredible horse, but you're not able to support them in the way that you would like, right? Or you have aspirations to go up the levels. But in order for you to go up the levels, you have to be able to have the balance and the control to jump higher. You have to be able to go faster and longer. You have to have more accuracy in your dressage, like all of those things. If you want to progress, that work has to also be supported by the out of the saddle work, right? Like we're looking at those like 1%ers. And I think the more that you can, when you work out, visualize, and we talk about this often, is visualize what you're doing in the saddle. And so today I had one of my clients do a very simple exercise, which was standing on one foot and looking left and right. And so, just to work on some very simple balance. Again, it doesn't need to be fancy. And this is something everyone watching can try at home. Just stand on one foot and look left and right. And so I just was like, I want you to visualize that you're looking for your next jump, and this is an upper level rider. And she was like, oh, wow. Because she'd got the feedback in her lesson that she was collapsing to one side when she looks to her jump. And so we just took a very simple balance exercise, but added a mental component of thinking about the job that she does in the tack. And then she was able to really feel like she was on a horse effectively and be like, okay, I need to lock in, and okay, I'm looking for my jump, So I think as well, if you can connect, and again, that's often my job, is connecting what you're doing out of the saddle to what is that motion in the saddle, right? A hinge pattern is jumping. Like, why do we need to be able to do certain plyometrics, shock absorption, so that we save our knees? Like, there's all of those elements, lateral movements. If you ever want to move your horse left and right, you need to be able to independently use your left and your right leg, So, and those things, like I said, can't always be taught in the saddle. And my client list just kind of attest to that, right? Because again, as I talked about, no one's not working hard in a lesson, right? Like I don't know a single rider that's paying for a lesson who's not there to get better. And who isn't there to work hard. But again, like I said, sometimes we just don't have the capacity. You're welcome, Heather. I hope you've enjoyed it. So yeah, sometimes we just don't have the capacity. And the more that you learn about your body, the more you can communicate with your coach. Like when I'm in a lesson, I can say to my coach, I'm really tight through my left hip today. Can you remind me of that? Or I'll ask, what are we doing today? And I'll be like, oh, okay, like just so I know how I could warm up before I hop in the saddle. Like how I do my ground warm up is a little bit different for if I'm having a jump lesson or a flat lesson. But again, I can communicate with my coach because I know my body to say, hey, I've actually been on the road for the last 7 hours. I'm feeling super tight. So I'm going to warm up before I hop in the tack, but also like if I'm looking a bit stiff, this is why. If you can get me moving, get us both going, I can have those conversations with my coach because I had that understanding with my body. So that's another cool aspect of working out is the level of conversations that you can have with your coach when you are in the saddle.
And then with your horse.
And then with your horse. Yeah. Because, you're clearer, right? Like, that's the whole point is when you can move your body, those aids are just so much better. They're more efficient. And yeah, that they're like, oh, this is what you actually mean, instead of being like, where's the aid gone? It's disappeared. And we don't deserve horses sometimes, right? They do so much for us, so much for us, and they save our bacon all the time. And bless them, that's the relationship we build with our best friends is to help us out when we do fail them. But again, we can do everything we can. And again, I can think of multiple times where my body has saved me because I'm in shape. So yeah, like nearly falling off on pre-training and ended up in a bush. But I didn't get eliminated because I just took a small detour into a bush. Yeah.
Safe space. It's all good. We've all been there.
Yeah.
Feel like maybe not the almost bailing, but what you were just talking about might be a positive, good way to wrap up tonight, unless we have any more questions or comments. I mean, I work with you regularly. I learned a lot tonight. I will leave the last word to you, Nardine. I will remind everyone that we do have our next winter webinar is in 2 weeks on nutrition strategies. So this whole series is getting us ready for this season ahead, where we will be a better teammate to our horses. We will be kind to ourselves and give ourselves the attention that we deserve in strengthening our bodies and movement and all of that. So over to you, Nardine, for the last word, and then we'll wrap up for tonight.
Yeah, but I mean that was pretty good, Steph. Like I said, I hope that anyone watching this who maybe is new to working out, that inspires you to try. And the words of Brene Brown, like if you're brave enough to step into the arena, like you will be rewarded. It takes a lot for us to show up and go to a show. We invest a lot of money into our sport, but we often don't invest in ourselves. And so you deserve love. Your body deserves the love, and that investment will thank you tenfold over your lifetime, not just in the saddle, but out of the saddle. So the health benefits alone, both physical and mental, are so key. But, again, as we've talked about, be a better teammate to your horses. They do so much for us. We ask them to do a lot, to go out there and compete and, be everything that we want them to be. And, I again, like I said, I think we owe it to them to show up as the best version that we can be. And one of those ways is to do the work out of the saddle. And, again, hopefully I've broken down a few misconceptions around what working out looks like. And that I just encourage anyone who watches this to don't be afraid to send me a question or ask anything. No questions silly. But yeah, just thank you so much for letting me speak tonight. Like I said, it's a topic I'm so passionate about. And, I just hope more people learn how cool it is to work out, and how much it can help with your riding. So thank you so much for letting me talk for the last hour and a bit.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so
Nardine.
much.
Thank you
there.
so much.
You're welcome, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.